This is part 2 of our video on initial value. So in part 1, we looked at initial value. We said in a table of values, it is term 0. So on the X side or the left-hand side, you are looking for 0, and then your initial value will be what's on the Y side or the right-hand side of your table. Then we looked at some examples where we didn't have the 0 value in our table and we had to calculate it by working backwards. And now we're going to take a look at a different way to calculate where I don't have to write out all my entries. And unfortunately, when I started recording this last time, I had a dry spot in my throat and started coughing and had to stop the video. So some of this is already filled in, but I'm going to walk you through it. So it says use the rate of change to calculate the initial value for each of the following. We have days rented and we have cost in dollars. So I started by finding my differences. So to get from 10 to 12, we added 2. From 12 to 14, we added 2. And from 14 to 16, we added 2. On the other side, to get from 810 to 946, I did 946 take away 810, and I got 136. And then I did the same thing. I did 1082 take away 946. I found we went up 136. And then I did 1218 take away 1082, and I also got that that was a difference of 136. So you'll notice in this one, it is a little different from the previous ones. The previous ones, we were always going up by 1 on the X side or the left-hand side. Here, I am not going up by 1, right? This tells me that for every 2 days that I rent whatever it is, the price is going up $136 for 2 days. So rate of change, which it has asked me to calculate in the question, is how much it goes up by for 1 day. So in order to calculate rate of change, we learned yesterday that we do delta Y over delta X. So the X should be the part on the left-hand side. The Y should be the column on the right-hand side. So delta is just the Greek letter delta, and in math and science, it means change. So it's the change in Y. So on the Y side, that would be the differences. And then divided by the change in X. So on the X side, that's my delta X, those differences. So I'm going to do 136 divided by 2. And 136 divided by 2 is 68. So what does that mean? That means that for every 1 day, the price goes up $68. It is $68 per day. That's my rate of change. Now, if I want to work back to the initial value, which is the whole point of this question, I would have to go back 10 times in order to find term 0. And I don't really want to have to do that, right? Sometimes my table of values, the numbers might be in the hundreds or the thousands, and I don't always want to have to extend the table. So we're going to talk about an alternative thing that we can do. To calculate my initial value, what I can do is still work backwards, but not write out all the entries, right? So here, if I go back, I had 266, and we subtracted, so we did the opposite, 136 one time. Here, when we were doing this example, we had to go back a number of different ways. So we started at 400, and then I did the opposite of subtracting 10. I added 10 1, 2, 3, 4 times. So for this one, I could have calculated the initial value by taking 400 and then adding 10 4 times, right? 10 times 4 is 40, and 400 plus 40 is 440, which is what the initial value worked out to be, right? So a shortcut to having to write the table out over and over and over again is to just count how many times you would have to go back and then just multiply your rate of change by that number. Okay, so here I know that it's going up by $68 per day. So I want to go back. So I'm going to start with the point that is closest to the zero term, which is this one. So 810. And then because we were adding $68 every day, I'm going to do the opposite and subtract $68. And how many times do I need to do it? Well, we're currently at 10 days. So I need to go back 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to 0. So that's 10 spaces. So I'm just going to multiply by 10. So you'll notice this is the y value of the closest term I have. This is the x value of the closest term. And then this is the opposite sign on my rate of change. All right, so my initial value is going to be 810. Take away 68 times 10 is 680. And then 810 take away 680 is 130. And that would be dollars. So our initial value is $130. So all I did was I found the entry closest to the zero term. I took its y value, or in this case, the cost. I said we're going up by $68 every day. So I'm going to do the opposite and subtract 68. And I have to do it 10 times to work back to term 0. Now, you could have done something a little different here if you were feeling adventurous. We are going up $136 every 2 days. So instead of subtracting 68, we could have done 136. But instead of 10, because we're doing it by 2s, we would actually only go back 5 times. So you could have done 136 times 5. Okay, we're going to try another example just to get a hang of it. So we've got here x and y. I have a table of values with some numbers. So I'm going to start with my differences. So from 5 to 7, I'm going to add 2. From 7 to 9, we added 2. And from 9 to 11, we added 2. On the other side, 410 to 366. 366 take away 410 is negative 44. So we went down 44. And then if I try 322, take away 366, we are subtracting 44 again. And then 278, take away 322 is negative 44. So I do notice this is linear because the differences are the same on both sides, which means I should be able to calculate my rate of change and I should be able to calculate my initial value. Just going to put a little separation line there. All right, I'm going to start with my rate of change. So this is going down 44 for every 2 x values. So I want to know how much we're going down for every 1 x value. So my rate of change is delta y over delta x. X, this side's delta x. There's y, so this is my delta y. So I'm going to do negative 44 divided by 2. Negative 44 divided by 2 is negative 22. So my rate of change is negative 22. So for every 1 entry we move down on the x side, we're going down 22 on the other side. Okay? To find the initial value, I could try to work backwards, right, and continue the table. And if that's what you want to do, that's fine. But we will eventually have some numbers that are a little too big for us to be able to do that. What I'm going to do is take the one closest to my 0 term, which is the first one in the table. I'm going to start at 410. And we're going to go backwards. So instead of subtracting 22, we are going to do the opposite and add 22. And we are going to end up having to go back 5 times to get to 0. So I've got 410 plus 22 times 5. I would multiply first. 22 times 5. Nope. 22 times 5 is 110. I don't know why I put an equal sign there. That was supposed to be a plus sign. And then 410 plus 110 is 520. So our initial value is 520. I don't have any units, so that's it. So anytime you're doing a question, I'd like you to try to calculate your rate of change and then use that rate of change to work backwards from the value that is closest to 0 in your table, right? So take the y value and then do the opposite of your rate of change and do it the number of times that you had from the x value from the point in your table. Okay, so you're going to take a little while, try to do some practice. We'll give you a few minutes for that, and then we'll move on afterwards to do equation of a graph.